Hi, I'm Silas. 2 years of my life, gone in 1 second. My own brother, the CEO, smashed my invention in front of everyone, laughed in my face and said, "You're a joke." My family? They watched, said nothing. But what they didn't know was, one of those clients pulled me aside and whispered, "Call me." 6 months later, that same brother was the one begging for mercy. So tell me, what would you do if the people who were supposed to lift you up were the ones that buried you first? The air inside the conference room was thick with nerves and too much ambition. The glass walls let the sun spill across the polished table, catching the edge of my notes, the faint reflection of my face. I'd spent 2 years living for this afternoon, 2 years of late nights, burned coffee, and the smell of solder in my apartment. Every failure, every restart, every small victory led to this. I adjusted my tie, not because it was crooked, but because I needed something to hold on to. My father's voice used to echo in my head before every big moment. "Don't let them see you small, son." So I straightened my back, forced a breath, and looked toward the far end of the table. Royce sat there like he owned the sunlight. My older brother, 8 years my senior and a lifetime ahead in arrogance. He caught my eye, smiled that tight, politician smile, and gave me a small nod as if to say, "Go ahead, show me what you've got." For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be proud. I started the presentation, voice steady, slides moving in rhythm with my words. This prototype represents 2 years of research into sustainable modular energy. It's designed for small communities, affordable, flexible, adaptable. Adira Chen, one of the visiting investors, leaned forward slightly. She wasn't one for empty compliments, but her eyes, sharp and calm, followed every diagram I pointed to. Each time she nodded, I felt like I was breathing again. Then Royce spoke. "Why don't we test it right now?" I froze. It wasn't scheduled for live testing. The internal circuits were delicate, meant for controlled conditions. "I'd rather not," I began, but he was already standing, that easy confidence dripping from every move. "Come on. If it works as well as you say, it should survive a little real-world pressure." He picked up the prototype, a small, intricate model about the size of a toaster, humming faintly with stored energy. My hands itched to stop him. "Royce, it's not wired for..." He twisted a connector, hard like a man wringing a chicken's neck. The light blinked red. He smirked. "Let's see what your genius built, little brother." Before I could move, he hurled it against the glass wall. The sound wasn't a crash. It was a detonation inside my chest. Plastic and metal burst across the floor. Years of my life scattered in a spray of broken parts. A hush swept through the room. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to vanish. Royce turned toward me, voice smooth, cruel. "This is trash. You're a joke. Get out before you ruin everything." I stood there, hands empty, words gone. I didn't cry, didn't blink. The faint hum of dying circuits filled my ears, like my dignity was still trying to breathe. He turned back to the board members, forced a laugh. "That's why you don't let amateurs play engineer." A few chuckles followed, the kind people give when they're afraid to pick sides. I caught Adira's eyes again. She didn't laugh. She bent down, picked up a small fragment of my prototype, half a copper plate with the engraved initials SR still visible. Her thumb traced the edge, careful, deliberate. "That's an impressive design," she said quietly. Then louder, "Can I have your contact?" The room seemed to shift, ever so slightly. Royce's smile faltered. I could see the confusion flash behind his calm facade. For me, that single sentence was oxygen, the first real breath I'd taken in years. I gathered what was left of my notes and walked out. The hallway's mirrored glass showed my reflection again and again, each one smaller, dimmer. Outside, the late afternoon heat hit like a slap. In the parking lot, I sank into the driver's seat of my old Ford truck. The air smelled like dust and hot vinyl. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the tungsten lamp my father had left me, my first project, built with him when I was 12. The base was scratched, the cord taped in 2 places, but it still worked. I plugged it into the outlet near the dashboard. The bulb flickered once, twice, then held steady, a small, stubborn glow against the dying light of the day. That was all I had left, a spark that refused to die. I leaned back, eyes fixed on that tiny light. "They think they broke me," I whispered, "but broken things have a way of holding warmth." That light, flickering quietly on the dash, stayed with me long after I turned off the engine. I sat there for what felt like hours. I don't remember the drive home. Just the hum of the tires, the empty road, and that busted lamp sitting in the passenger seat like it had more life left in it than I did. My house was quiet. No dog, no family waiting, no music. Just the tick of the kitchen clock and the low groan of the AC trying to outpace the Texas heat. I dropped my keys on the workbench in the garage where I used to dream. I didn't touch a tool that first night. I didn't sleep much either. The next morning, I made coffee strong enough to strip paint and sat beside my broken lamp on the workshop floor. My prototype's remains were still in the truck bed. I couldn't bring myself to unpack them. I just stared at the tungsten bulb until it blinked out and left me in silence. It's strange how silence can echo louder than screaming. For days, I ignored every call. Messages stacked up. Some from colleagues I barely knew. Most I didn't bother checking. I avoided mirrors, didn't shave, wore the same gray t-shirt 3 days in a row. I'd worked for so long to be someone my family could see, not just look at, and somehow that day, I became invisible again. Then came a voicemail. My mother's nurse. "Mr. Silas, just a heads up. Your brother dropped off a donation check for the oncology wing. Said it was from both of you. Very generous. Please thank him for me." I stood in the middle of my kitchen, gripping the counter like it was the only thing holding me up. From both of us. Of course he did. Royce had a way of wrapping his ego in generosity, of using kindness as a leash. He'd erase me with a signature. He still finds ways to make me invisible, even when he gives. That was when I started pacing, fists clenched, chewing on the same question over and over. What does he want to prove? That I can't fight back? That I won't? The days blurred together after that, until one night, just after 9 p.m., someone knocked at my door. I almost didn't answer. But something told me it wasn't another delivery flyer. I opened the door to find Leora, my assistant from the lab, standing there with a canvas folder in her arms and an exhausted smile on her face. "I wasn't sure you'd be home," she said. "I figured you might need this." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. That was Leora, direct but not pushy. She laid the folder on my workbench and opened it. "I backed everything up. Your designs, the latest test results, even the backup investors list. It's not much, but you didn't lose everything." I stared at the papers, blinking like they were written in another language. I hadn't seen those numbers, those circuit maps, since the prototype hit the wall. "You saved all this?" She nodded. I figured Royce wouldn't. Someone had. 2. That broke something open in me. Not tears, not anger, just a quiet cracking sound deep inside, like ice thawing. Sometimes help doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it knocks, quietly. She didn't stay long. Left me with the folder and a look that said, "Don't give up just yet." When the door closed behind her, I sat back down in the workshop and opened my email for the first time in days. Near the bottom of the inbox, one message caught my eye. From AC. "What you built deserves to be seen. I'd like to talk." No extra fluff, no business jargon, just those 2 sentences. I read them twice, then 3 more times. My hand hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type anything. Hope is dangerous. It asks you to stand up again when your legs still shake. Later that night, I met some old friends at Joe's Diner, our usual booth near the jukebox. They greeted me with cautious smiles, the kind people give when they've already heard something they don't want to ask about. "Hey man, didn't know you were still in town?" one said, sipping a Coke. Another leaned in, voice low. "I thought you left the company? That what Royce said true?" I tried to smile, failed. "Which part?" He hesitated. "That you had a breakdown. Walked out after wrecking some demo?" The blood in my ears roared. My chest went tight. I didn't answer right away. That's how he wins, by making my silence look like madness. I left early. Didn't finish my burger. Just said I had a migraine and drove home with my windows down, trying to cool the heat crawling up my neck. Back in the garage, I turned on every light. The tungsten bulb flickered back to life. I pulled out my backup test logs. Leora had labeled them with sticky notes and thumbtacked the final report on the wall above the lamp. Then I reached for one of the smaller parts in my parts bin. Something I'd been tinkering with months ago. A circuit that stored backup charge in case of sudden outages. I connected it to a power cell, fingers moving on instinct. When I flipped the switch, the tiny module buzzed, then blinked, once, twice, and held. It was small, imperfect, but it lived. I sat back, wiped my hands on my jeans, and looked around the space I'd built with my own hands. The garage, the tools, the lamp. They were mine, still here. Then I opened my laptop again, stared at Adira's message one more time. This time, I typed a reply. "Let's talk." Because this time, I wouldn't let him define what failure meant. 2 months passed like mist on the windshield, there, then gone. I spent most days in my garage, working in quiet layers, one circuit at a time. Leora kept sending files, checking in with gentle persistence. Adira and I had a few calls, short, careful, but something was shifting. She wasn't just curious anymore. She believed. Then, late one afternoon, an email landed in my inbox like a ghost from a life I thought I'd buried. Subject, Rowan Dynamics, 20th Anniversary, Body. You are cordially invited to join the Rowan family for a private dinner commemorating 20 years of legacy. Family only. It didn't say who sent it, but I didn't need a name. The tone, formal, rehearsed, reeked of Royce. For a minute, I hovered over the delete button, but I didn't press it. Sometimes you show up not for peace, but to remember why you left. I opened my closet, bypassed anything new, and pulled out Dad's old watch from the back drawer. The strap was cracked, but the time still held steady. I slipped it on. A quiet anchor. The restaurant in Dallas looked like every place Royce admired. Minimalist, expensive, full of mirrors and men in tailored jackets. The valet barely looked at me as he took my keys. I walked in alone. They'd booked a private room near the back. As I stepped in, the conversations faltered. Some heads turned, Others looked away like I was an awkward topic they hadn't rehearsed for. I scanned the room. Royce, center table, holding court. Mother sat to his right, wrapped in a soft shawl, her smile brittle. And then, across the table, Adira. She blinked when she saw me, surprised but composed. She gave a small nod, almost reflexive. She hadn't expected me. Probably hadn't been told I'd be there at all. I found my name card tucked near the end of the table, right next to the hallway leading to the restrooms. Subtle, thoughtful. A little message from Royce that I didn't belong. Not even tonight. They placed my name card next to the restroom door. That's how you erase someone. Quietly. Dinner began with clinks of crystal and meaningless toasts. Royce stood, wine glass raised, smiling like a man who knew every eye was on him. "We've built this company from nothing," he said, voice smooth, loud enough to reach the farthest corners. "And through trials, mistakes, and yes, even spectacular flops, Rowan Dynamics has endured. Because we believe in family. We build together. We rise together." He never said my name. Not once. Then he chuckled and gestured to the centerpiece at the table. Speaking of history, who remembers when my little brother tried to build that nuclear Lego set? Scattered laughter followed. A few people chuckled awkwardly. My jaw clenched. "I swear," he continued, "it had wires coming out like spaghetti. We called it the spark box. Nearly blew the garage fuse." I looked down. The centerpiece was my old prototype, the one he shattered 2 months ago. It had been glued together crudely, edges uneven, wires dangling like limp veins. He took my failure and turned it into decor. Adira glanced at me, her mouth slightly open. Even she couldn't mask the shock. I forced a smile I didn't feel. Across the table, my mother stared down at her napkin. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood, excusing myself. Walked past the kitchen, past the waitstaff, and stopped by a tall window that overlooked the Dallas skyline. The city lights blurred through the glass, twin smears of blue and orange. Behind me, I heard a whisper. "That's the brother who couldn't handle pressure, right?" The voice was soft, young, some intern or assistant who hadn't learned when to shut up. I gripped the windowsill until my knuckles went pale. My heart didn't race. It settled, like something inside had finally landed. If they're going to tell my story, I might as well make it true, my way. A moment later, I heard soft footsteps. Adira appeared beside me, holding her clutch with both hands. "I didn't know he'd invite me," she said quietly. "I wouldn't have come if I'd known it was a stunt." I didn't answer. "I've been reviewing your modular grid design," she added more seriously. "Off the record, what you have, if it scales, it could undercut Royce's entire line within 2 years. I turned to her slowly. She met my eyes. "If you're ready to start again, I'll back you." That was the first time in weeks I felt warmth in my chest. Not pride, not vengeance. Purpose. Back at the table, Royce was laughing again, basking in the glow of people who owed him favors or feared him too much to speak plainly. I looked at him and saw a man who had finally overplayed his hand. He just handed me the reason to rise. I walked back to the table slowly, the noise quieting slightly as I approached. I picked up the broken prototype, turned it in my hands. Then I pulled off my father's watch and set it down next to the centerpiece. The ticking was faint but steady. "Dad built the first spark that made this company possible," I said, my voice calm but steady. "He believed in both of us. Don't forget that." No one said a word. I left the room without looking back. Outside, the valet handed me my keys without making eye contact. I slid into the driver's seat, placed the broken prototype on the passenger seat gently. Let's rebuild. One more time. And this time, I wouldn't be building for them. 3 weeks after that dinner, the silence between my past and future broke. Not with noise, but the sound of sliding steel. Adira's driver dropped me off in front of what looked like an old textile warehouse in Houston. Paint chipped off the side walls. Vines curled around rusted gutters. But the inside, God, the inside, felt like another world. The moment I stepped in, I knew. High ceilings stretched upward like cathedral arches. Light filtered in through skylights, glinting off polished floors and rows of tool benches. Wires hung loose above semi-assembled consoles. A quiet buzz hummed beneath the floor, like the room itself was alive, waiting. It wasn't home, but it felt like something better. Freedom. I glanced around at the team Adira had pulled together. 4 engineers in their 20s, focused, alert. None of them looked at me like I was the fallen Rowan. No polite pity. Just acknowledgement. Respect feels strange when you've been invisible too long. Adira walked in from the back office. She didn't smile, didn't waste a word, just handed me a cup of black coffee and motioned toward a long table covered in blueprints. "Welcome to Ground Zero," she said. "Now let's get to work." We dove in. Hours passed, forgotten. She challenged everything: materials, placement, projected failures, and I pushed back. "This configuration can't cool fast enough," she pointed out mid-afternoon. "It can, if we split the cores and thread the drain differently." She paused, then nodded. "Fair." We kept going, talking fast, thinking faster. "I'm not here to comfort you," she said at one point, looking straight at me. "I'm here to build something the world can't ignore." I met her gaze. Then we're speaking the same language. Later that night, after the others left and the warehouse quieted down to nothing but fluorescent flickers, Adira unlocked a digital vault on her laptop and turned it to me. Inside was a list of potential investors she'd been courting. My eyes froze halfway down. Mills Tech, Royce's biggest corporate partner, the one he bragged about landing at every family gathering. "If we prove this tech," she said, voice even, "they'll drop him. Quietly, strategically. They're only loyal to returns." It hit me like a second wind. I wasn't just rebuilding a product. I was rebuilding a legacy he thought he'd buried. I worked late that night. Everyone had gone home. Even Adira had taken a call and ducked out. I stayed, fingers twitching with electricity. Every flick of the soldering pen, every hum of connection. It gave me back parts of myself I thought were gone. In the corner of my desk, I placed my father's tungsten lamp, the same one I'd carried out of the truck weeks ago. It glowed steadily now, quiet but stubborn. That little light followed me like a heartbeat. A few hours in, I heard a light knock. Leora stepped, inside holding a sandwich in one hand and a set of updated schematics in the other. "You didn't eat," she said softly. "I wasn't hungry," I mumbled. She raised an eyebrow. "You don't need to prove you belong, Silas. You already do." That stuck with me. Long after she left, I sat staring at that lamp. Something in me started to believe it. Then, around 2 a.m., just as I was shutting down my screen, a courier arrived. The guy didn't say a word, just handed me a thick envelope and walked off. No return address. I opened it carefully, unease already coiling in my gut. Inside was a single photograph, me and Adira, standing beside each other at the family dinner. It had been cropped tightly. Personal. Too personal. Folded behind it was a note. Royce's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Be careful who you build with. I taught you better than this. I clenched my jaw. But it wasn't over yet. Also inside, a draft patent. Registered 2 days ago. Royce's name was listed as the sole inventor. My design. My circuits. My signature framework. He didn't just take what I built. He tried to erase me from the record of my own existence. I sat still for a long moment, holding the papers. Adira came back in sometime later, saw the envelope in my hand. Her brows lifted, eyes scanning my face for the explosion, but it never came. I set the photo down, then the patent, then slowly pushed my laptop shut. He just made his last move, I said, voice low. Now it's my turn. She didn't ask what I meant. She just nodded. I spent the rest of the night finalizing the new prototype outline. Every adjustment would take me further from the version Royce had stolen, and closer to something better, smarter, real. At 4 a.m., I turned off the overheads, leaving the warehouse dark except for one thing, Dad's lamp. Let him have the paper. I'll have the proof. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man humiliated is a man who learned to wait. 3 weeks after Royce's envelope arrived, I found myself sitting across from Adira again, this time in a quieter corner of her office where light pooled softly across glass blueprints and legal folders instead of circuitry. No more prototypes, no more soldering irons. This battle would be fought in conference rooms and courtrooms, not on workbenches. I wasn't going to fight him in public, I said, drawing the revised design schematic toward me. Not yet. I'd rather make him choke on the truth first. Adira leaned back, arms crossed, calculating. You present this at the expo, file the real patent tied to time-stamped files, team logs, and development threads going back years, and that stunt he pulled dies on paper. If I do this right, I replied, he won't just lose credit. He'll lose everything built on it. Adira didn't flinch. Then let's build carefully. 2 days later, we flew to Dallas. Not for Royce, but for Marcus Elridge, a name Adira dug up through a mutual contact. Patent attorney, mid-50s, gray suit, quiet gravitas. The kind of man who's seen too many bright ideas buried under bad contracts. He greeted us in a narrow office downtown, lined with law journals and frame diagrams. One of those frames caught my eye, an old concept drawing of an energy lattice prototype. Mine. I didn't need to read the date in the corner to know. I had drawn that sketch in 2017. Royce must have brought it to Marcus during his early pitches. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then said, I remember your work. Royce claimed you'd scrapped the idea. I nodded, jaw tight. He didn't just steal it, he rehearsed the lie. Twist S9 dropped into place right then. Marcus agreed to help. Quietly. Off the record. He warned us his former ties to Rowan Dynamics could raise conflict questions, but he believed the case was strong if we were patient. You don't go to war with money, he told me, flipping through my documents. You go with evidence and patience. Make one mistake, and his legal team will bury you before opening statements. I understood. Back in Houston, Adira moved fast. She registered our prototype under a new corporate identity, Haven Tech Innovations. Clean name, no baggage, no family blood on the walls. We submitted our entry to the National Energy Tech Expo, set to open in Washington, D.C. in 2 weeks. But the event schedule revealed something I expected but still hated seeing. One of the final stage judges was a longtime friend of Royce, a smiling boardroom puppet. Adira noticed, too. He's already waiting for us, she said, eyes narrowing. I'd rather lose on my feet, I told her, than vanish on my knees. She didn't argue. Things escalated fast. 2 days before the expo, an article surfaced online under a fake business news site. Former engineer, accused of IP theft from Rowan Dynamics. My photo, my name, carefully curated snippets of out-of-context documents. The entire thing read like Royce himself had written it during a late-night scotch binge. Adira was livid. He's burning the bridge before we even cross it. I stayed calm. Let him build the lie higher, I said. The fall will hurt more. But Leora, sharp-eyed as ever, wasn't done. Twist S10 came from her hands. She traced the article's origin back to a ghostwriting firm out of Chicago, whose client list matched a PR consultant still on Royce's payroll. And then she found it. Chat logs, file transfers, planning threads, evidence that Royce personally approved the smear campaign. Adira read through it, jaw set. This isn't just rivalry anymore. It's sabotage. I nodded. Good. Now we have motive. The night before the expo, the warehouse was quiet. Most of the team had gone home. I stayed late, working under the lamp again, its tungsten glow spilling across the prototype's shell. Final checks, clean solder lines, every seal tightened like a promise. I took a breath and whispered, Dad, you said patience builds strength. I think I finally understand what you meant. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to get even. I was ready. I packed the prototype into a metal case lined with foam, latched it shut, and stood. In the mirror on the opposite wall, I saw myself, not as Royce's younger brother or the man who'd been humiliated in front of investors, but as a builder who refused to disappear. Tomorrow, I said, locking eyes with my reflection, he'll see what I've been building in silence. And this time, the whole world will be watching. The morning of the expo arrived in quiet layers of light and breath. I barely slept, just enough to keep from trembling when I laced my shoes and zipped the metal case shut. The Dallas Convention Center loomed like a monument of steel and ambition, banners fluttering along its glass facade. Royce's face stared down from every poster. Innovation Visionary of the Year. I paused under one. There's something poetic, I murmured, about walking into a room that once cheered your destroyer. Adira met me by the vendor check-in, a tablet under one arm, black blazer crisp as always. Leora texted, all systems green, data vault synced, good luck. Inside, our booth was barely more than a table and a glass dome. No bold logo, no flashy graphics. Just the prototype, silent, sleek, waiting. People passed by, then circled back. The glow beneath the glass caught their eyes, but it was the absence of branding that made them curious. Mystery still sells better than certainty. Then, just before noon, I felt it. That familiar tension in the air. Static mixed with memory. Royce. I turned. There he was, flanked by 2 men in tailored suits and flanked by 3 smiles too wide to be genuine. His eyes locked onto mine. He walked up, voice low but firm. You've got some nerve showing up here. I didn't blink. I learned it from you. He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know, you can't patent what doesn't exist anymore. I didn't reply. I just smiled, because I knew what was coming. An hour later, I stood beside Adira on the main stage. The crowd was thick. Engineers, investors, journalists. Royce sat in the front row, arms folded. The moderator barely masked her disinterest as she read from the card. Next up, Haven Tech Innovations, presenting an independent energy prototype. No fanfare, just a brief nod. Adira pressed a button. The dome lifted, and the prototype came to life. Soft blue light pulsed outward in quiet waves. A hush fell over the room as the display screen behind us lit up with energy metrics. Clean generation, zero waste, adaptive modulation. The audience leaned forward. I saw phones rise, cameras click. A young reporter in the second row whispered, just loud enough, "Isn't that the same core tech from Rowan Dynamics?" I took the mic. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about reclamation, about remembering who built what and refusing to let silence finish the job." Adira stepped forward. She clicked through a sequence of slides, emails, time-stamped code logs, test reports, all dated years before Royce's patent filing. Then she paused. And yet, the official patent was filed under one name alone, Royce Rowan. Gasps, flashbulbs. Royce shifted in his chair. Then it happened. Marcus Elridge stepped onto the stage. Calm, steady. He raised a folder. "I'm here on behalf of the United States Patent Office," he said. "Effective immediately, the claim held by Rowan Dynamics is under federal suspension, pending full investigation into intellectual property fraud." The room exploded. Royce stood, sputtering, but his voice was drowned by a swarm of questions from journalists already moving toward the stage. His face flushed, then drained. He didn't yell. He didn't lunge. He just stared at me. And I stared back. Not as his little brother, but as the man who finally stood in the light of his own name. I could have gloated. Could have said every line I'd rehearsed for years. But I didn't. Instead, I lifted the mic again and simply said, "You can destroy a machine. You can't destroy the hands that built it." Then I stepped back and let the silence settle. The prototype still hummed behind me, alive, unwavering. Later, as we packed up, I passed by the wall where Royce's posters had been. Staff were peeling them down, rolling them into tubes like forgotten promises. Adira fell in a step beside me. "You didn't even look back," she said. I zipped the case and straightened. Why would I? That's not where I'm going. We pushed through the doors into the bright, late afternoon sun, the city pulsing ahead of us. Then a voice called from behind. "Mr. Rowan, the Department of Commerce wants to meet with you tomorrow." I stopped, turned halfway. Calm, steady, alert. "I guess," I said quietly, "we're just getting started." The thing about exposing corruption is, it never ends where you expect. 2 days after the expo, the world decided it knew who I was. Every headline, every push notification, every morning show. My face stared back from every screen. Rowan CEO under investigation for fraud. The forgotten brother who exposed a corporate giant. I should have felt vindicated. After all, truth had finally won. But sitting in my kitchen, coffee going cold, I just stared at my reflection on the TV. The truth had weight, and now it was sitting squarely on my chest. Adira's phone never stopped ringing. Every investor wanted statements, assurances, interviews. Marcus warned us through a short, tired voicemail. Royce will fight. He's got money, media, and the ego to burn it all. And he was right. By evening, Royce's video hit the internet. A perfect performance. His expression carefully rehearsed, the lighting impeccable, the delivery soft and sorrowful. He began, "I've always supported my brother's efforts. It pains me to see him manipulated by outside forces. Silas has struggled for years, and it hurts me deeply to see him used like this." He painted me as unstable, again. Only this time, it wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It was broadcast across every major network. Then came his ace, Twist S13, Royce produced a set of internal emails, supposedly from me, discussing plans to fabricate evidence, the formatting, the phrasing, all engineered to feel authentic. Within hours, headlines shifted. Did Silas Rowan fake the proof? Corporate scandal or family feud? Truth doesn't always win the second round. Adira slammed her laptop shut so hard it rattled the coffee cups. He's burning everything to save himself. I leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. Then let him burn. I'm done playing his game. But saying it didn't make the heat go away. That night I drove. No destination, no playlist, just the hum of tires against asphalt and the noise of my thoughts. By instinct more than plan, I ended up outside the old house, the one our father built, the one Royce left to rot after he made his first million. The front gate sagged. The workshop smelled of dust and oil. I ran my hand over the workbench, felt the grooves where Dad used to set his tools. The tungsten lamp still sat in the corner, faintly rusted, still working when I plugged it in. It flickered, then steadied. I sat down. I kept waiting for him to be proud. I whispered to no one. Even now. For the first time in months, I let it fall. All of it. The anger, the exhaustion, the love that never found a place to land. Tears came quiet. Not like in the movies. Just tired. That old lamp blinked once. The same way it had the day Royce smashed my prototype. But this time, I didn't look away. The phone buzzed. Leora's name lit the screen. Silas? Her voice was small. They're going to take this to court. Royce's lawyers are filing motions. Defamation, corporate theft, mental instability. They'll dig up everything, even your father's debts. I rubbed my eyes. Then let them. The truth doesn't need polish. She hesitated. Marcus just called me. He's been subpoenaed. They're trying to discredit him too. Twist S14. That was it. The line Royce crossed that he couldn't return from. I'm done waiting, I said finally. If they want the truth, they'll get it. My voice, my story, no filters. The next afternoon, I set up a camera in my father's old workshop. No backdrop, no editing. Just me and that lamp. I hit record. They told me to stay silent, I began, my voice steady but raw. They said silence keeps peace, but peace built on lies is just control. I let the pause breathe. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. And I'm done hiding. No music, no branding, just honesty. When I uploaded it, I didn't expect much. But within an hour, the video exploded. Comment after comment poured in. Finally, someone said it. I've been the forgotten one too. He's not crazy. He's right. For the first time, the noise didn't drown me. It carried me. It was past midnight when the last ping came in. A new email. No sender name. Just a subject line. You're not the only one he's ruined. My hand hovered for a second before I clicked it open. Dozens of attached files appeared. Contracts, messages, reports, other employees, other victims. One note at the bottom read, "He took everything from us too. You're not alone." I sat back, the glow from the lamp painting the desk in amber light. "Looks like," I murmured. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. When you fight a man like Royce, the real war begins after the truth comes out. 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in a silent corridor of the Capitol, the polished floors echoing each step, tie too tight, breath too slow. Across the hallway, cameras flashed through the glass doors of the Senate hearing room. Reporters murmured like waves against a wall. Rowan brothers face off today. Will Royce step down? Corporate corruption or sibling rivalry? It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reckoning. Adira stood a few feet away, calm as ever, clipboard in hand, eyes locked with mine. "No matter what he says in there, stay still," she said under her breath. "The truth will move louder than you ever could." I nodded. We walked in. The hearing began under bright overhead lights that made everything look sterile, like truth couldn't hide here, even if it tried. Royce sat with a team of attorneys, his suit crisp, his smile measured. I watched his hand, steady as ever. That hand had written lies on official documents, signed my work away like it was trash. Now it rested on the table like nothing was wrong. He spoke first, of course. "My brother misunderstood business dynamics. I only ever tried to protect our shareholders. Family disagreements shouldn't be litigated in public." He glanced over at me, a half-smile playing on his face like we were just kids arguing over toys. But Marcus Elridge, seated beside me, quietly slid a folder to the committee chair. No words, just paper. Inside, years of bank records, digitally time-stamped files, internal emails tracing Royce's steps. One email caught the chair's eye. His brow furrowed as he read it aloud. "If Silas ever surfaces again, bury him with paperwork." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Royce's jaw tightened. His fingers finally moved. The smirk disappeared. That was twist S15, my turn. I rose slowly, heart steady. I wasn't nervous anymore. Just ready. "I didn't come here to destroy my brother," I began. "I came here to stop a cycle that's been destroying people like me for decades, the ones who build quietly while others take the bow." I reached into my satchel and placed something on the table. My father's lamp. It clicked on with a warm, amber glow. This was my first invention. My brother laughed at it. My father said it would light the world. He was right. Just not in the way he thought. Silence fell. Even the clicking of pens stopped. I could feel Royce watching me, waiting to see if I'd crack. But I didn't come here broken. Then came the unraveling. Royce's lawyer tried to interrupt, procedural objections, claims of irrelevant emotion, but the committee chair raised a hand. "Let's proceed with evidence." That's when Adira nodded at the tech team. The monitors blinked to life. Twist S16. Security footage, hidden server data, audio logs, all extracted by Leora with relentless precision. One clip froze the room. Royce, in his office, sneering into a speakerphone. "As long as he keeps quiet, I win. He's not built for the spotlight. He'll fold." Laughter in the room. "Call legal. Get the NDA papers ready. Make sure he chokes on his conscience." The room exploded. Senators leaned forward. Reporters stood. Flashbulbs burst. Royce lunged from his chair, shouting, "That was taken out of context." But the words were too clear. The tone too real. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. "I stopped being quiet," I said, finally, voice low. Security moved in. Royce was escorted out under a chorus of snapping cameras and shouted questions. I stood, not with pride, but stillness. Adira touched my shoulder gently. "It's over," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, it's just done." Later that night, after the noise died down, I drove home alone. The house was quiet. The air smelled of solder and dust. I set the lamp on the workbench, turned it on. This time, the light didn't flicker. I sat, hands folded, back aching from the long day. My inbox buzzed. An email from the U.S. Patent Office. "Mr. Rowan, your petition for full patent restoration has been approved. You are listed as the sole originator of the Haven Core system and the LightSync model." I exhaled. Not joy. Just release. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means I stopped needing his apology. The air outside was cooler than usual for Texas. I stepped out onto the porch. The sky stretched above me, vast and empty and free. From the window behind, the lamp glowed, a tiny piece of proof that I was still standing. Some things, I murmured, are worth rebuilding, even if they were born from ruin. I thought that was the end, but redemption has its own price. 6 months passed. Texas had warmed into spring again, not too harsh, not too soft, just honest. That morning, I stepped barefoot into the backyard of my house on the east side of Austin. My garden was still young, tomatoes stubborn, rosemary thriving, and a stubborn patch of mint taking more space than it deserved. I held the watering can steady, the same way I held my breath now, not out of fear, but out of habit I hadn't unlearned yet. The quiet didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt earned. On my way to the garage, I passed the newsstand near the corner. The front page stared back at me. Former Rowan CEO sentenced fraud, perjury, and permanent ban from corporate governance. I didn't buy it, didn't need to. The chapter was already closed in me. Adira showed up just past 9, balancing 2 coffees and a brown paper bag that probably held the same blueberry muffins she insisted weren't good for her, but always finished anyway. You turned down 5 interview requests this week, she teased as she slid onto the stool at my workbench. That's because I'm not interested in performing anymore. I just want to build. She smiled and tapped the edge of my coffee cup. You always did. We sipped in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then she asked softly, "Would you forgive him, if he ever asked?" I stared at the lamp on the shelf, the same one that had followed me through it all. "Forgiveness isn't for him," I said. "It's for me." She nodded like she already knew I'd say that. Later that afternoon, the mail came in thick, mostly business documents, a few bills, a donation request from an old college. But buried in the stack was a handwritten envelope, no return address. I recognized the looping handwriting immediately. Marcus. He'd retired a month ago, bought a small place out on the coast, just outside Charleston. He said the only cases he took now involved stray dogs and property lines. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. Justice doesn't heal, truth does. But you can't keep living in the courtroom of memory. I held on to this. I figured you'd know what to do with it someday. Folded inside was a copy of my original prototype sketch, the one I thought I'd lost. The lines were faint, smudged in some corners, but the idea was still there. Still mine. I framed it that evening next to the tungsten lamp. After dinner, I checked my email like I always did. Mostly internal updates from the Haven Tech team. One note from Leora about a school program we were launching next quarter. Then I saw it. Subject: "I'm sorry." It was from Royce. The message wasn't long. No signature, no explanation. "They took everything. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know. Dad would have been proud of you." I read it twice. Then again. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I whispered to the screen, "Then that's enough." And then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but peace. The following week, Adira and I stood side by side at the launch of Haven Light, a line of solar-powered systems designed for low-income neighborhoods and off-grid communities. It wasn't flashy. That wasn't the point. If technology doesn't help people, I told the crowd, it's just noise. And as a quiet nod to how far we'd come, we'd included the tungsten lamp in the center of the display, still working, still glowing. It flickered briefly when the lights dimmed, then steadied, casting a warm glow across the room. No one noticed what it meant. But I did. It had once symbolized humiliation. Now it meant something else entirely. That night, after the guests had left and the showroom had gone quiet, I sat in the workshop alone. The lamp hummed beside me. I spoke into the silence. Not to anyone else, just to myself. "They say revenge tastes sweet," I said softly. "They're wrong. It's bitter, heavy, leaves you hollow. But rebuilding, that's where the sweetness hides. Not in proving them wrong, but in proving to yourself that you can rise again." I shut down the systems, one by one. Only the lamp remained on. I turned off the overhead lights and walked outside. The sky above Austin was clear, stars stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. Cool air, still night. Behind me, through the window, the lamp still glowed. "Some lights don't shine to be seen," I murmured. "They shine so you can find your way home." And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally home.